Hey everyone, so One Piece chapter 985 just came out, and I know I've said this for the last several chapter reviews, this is a great chapter, but the reality is Act 3 is ramping up. I legitimately feel like each chapter of the last 3 chapters has topped the previous chapter, and this one was maybe the best chapter of Act 3 so far. I'm going to try and not use that phrase lightly from here on out, but that is legitimately how I feel. So a lot to unpack this chapter. I'll talk about the more exciting stuff towards the end. There's timestamps below. I think there's also chapter stamps throughout this video. But I'm going to start from the beginning with the Scabbards facing off against Kanjuro. And Kanjuro has leveled up so hard as a character over this singular act. Because, he went from basically being one of the least intimidating, least impactful Scabbards to basically being one of the coolest villains that we have had in Wano so far, and potentially one of the coolest villains we're going to have in the entire series. Because him just stepping up in the first place towards the beginning of this chapter with an army of, his own samurai behind him, that was a really cool image, and it was an intimidating sort of look for him as basically a big bad in a new light that we haven't really seen him in before. And then when I realized a little bit later, I think from Kiku's dialogue, that this isn't just an army of random samurai that he's collected, this is actually a bunch of samurai that he's personally drawn, that made my respect for him go up, a couple more notches. So I think Kanjuro just in general, I don't think we've yet to see the depths of how formidable his ability is, but just the fact that, I don't think he could take all of those Scabbards on by himself, because at the very least, Ashura Doji, Inuarashi, and Nekomamushi, all 3 of them have shown that they're roughly comparable to or on par with a Calamity or a commander like Jack. So I think there's a very rare number of characters who could actually take on all of these Scabbards at once, right? But the fact that Kanjuro at least seems confident, and it does seem like he legitimately could be capable of stalling them at least for a little bit. It's hard to tell exactly where this scene went because we cut away, and then towards the end of the chapter we saw a little bit of, Kiku. It looked like Kiku crying over something like that. I don't know if they'd gotten past Kanjuro or not. But it does look like Kanjuro is capable of at least stalling this group, which is just really, really impressive for a character who I would never have expected this from, 50 chapters ago. So I think that overall scene was really well done. At the very least, it was, it was a short scene, but it was well drawn. I had to unfortunately read, because I am doing this chapter review pretty early, I unfortunately had to read some pretty terrible translations, okay? I have not had to read a chapter with such terrible translations in a long time. I thought we were past that, but, it is what it is. Hopefully at the time that this video is coming out, we've gotten some better translations, but I did not have that luxury when I read this chapter. But it did look like Oda was going for some more poetic dialogue, at the very least with what Kiku was saying to Kanjuro. And then when that clash finally happened, I was actually a little surprised to see that we're getting some... It felt like the Scabbard that we were focusing on the most in this interaction was Kiku. And I don't know, I'm just a little surprised at that Oda chose Kiku to be kind of the one who's interacting a little more with Kanjuro, the one who's attacking him more. I don't know I never felt like there was any sort of dynamic between the two before. Maybe I have to go reread Oden's flashback. Maybe I have to go reread parts of Wano, but I'm just a little surprised that out of all the Scabbards there, it was kind of Kiku who Oda kind of singled out to basically be the one who's interacting with Kanjuro a little bit more. Could have easily been Raizo, who we know has been part of that trio of Kinemon, Kanjuro, and Raizo for a good part of the journey. It could have been Kawamatsu, who previously fought a little bit with Kanjuro when Kanjuro had his reveal. So I don't know, I'm just surprised. I'd like to think that either this means that there's a little more of a storyline that's going to go on for Kiku, and that maybe she's going to have a bit of a ongoing dynamic with Kanjuro that matters, but at the same time it could just be nothing. Maybe Oda just felt like I need to give her a little bit more talking time. Maybe she's been a little bit neglected out of the Scabbards so far. Overall, I think this was the first Scabbard scene that I've enjoyed in Onigashima, because I of course enjoyed the parts when they were on the boat earlier on at the start of Act 3, both when they arrived at the shore initially and the fallout after Oden's flashback. I liked that stuff with the Scabbards then, but since then I've kind of been not too interested in their scenes and kind of just been looking forward to the next scene. But this was the first Scabbard scene that kind of had my attention and had me hooked from the start. But moving past that, the next scene was Luffy and Yamato. I think that was the next scene. I'm 95% sure that was the next scene. So the next scene was Luffy and Yamato. And this scene I liked a lot because, okay, again, bad translations, So I actually don't know how I feel as much about Yamato's character so far. I want to like her. I am, very interested in the idea behind her, a female Oni Kaido offspring that wants to be like Odin, that seems to get along really well with Luffy, that's known Ace. Like, it's an exciting concept, and it opens up a whole new potential storyline in Wano, with her being a significant character. But I can't tell you from the dialogue that, like, it made me enjoy the character more or less, because the translations were just so bad. I need to read this in a better... Definitely the Viz translations will help a lot, basically. But it looked like it was some funny dialogue. It looked like it was a funny back and forth. I just couldn't make any sense of it for the most part. I got the gist of it, but I don't know if I like her yet. Also, actually, I'll stop here real quick before I go into why I really like the part that I really liked about this interaction. I feel like I should address the Yamato, like what I'm referring to. I've been saying her, right? So let me just quickly explain why I've been saying her, and why then for a character like Kiku, I do refer to Kiku. Even though Kiku is biologically a man, I refer to Kiku as a she. Even though Yamato is biologically a woman, I'm still referring to her as a she. I'm going to give my explanation here. This is just my explanation, coming from maybe not the most knowledgeable source or whatever, but this is from my understanding of the general way that things are. And if I'm wrong, then you all tell me in the comments below, and no matter what, there's not going to be a consensus on this, I assume, but I am mostly just going to go by... I'm going to give my explanation. If it looks like in the comments people strongly disagree, then I will happily change. If it looks like people are on board with what I said, then I'm probably going to stick with it until Luffy says something otherwise. So if Luffy refers to her as a he, that's what I'm changing. Alright? Because I'm just going to go with what Luffy says at the end of the day. But my explanation basically, and I feel like I should just get it out of the way at this point, my understanding is that with people who have experienced some sort of gender dysphoria, they legitimately feel that they are an X in a Y body, right? So Kiku, for example, we got a line earlier on, like, this one is a woman at heart, right? So even though she's biologically a male, I'm going to refer to her as a woman because she legitimately feels like a woman. That's what she's identifying with for a very specific reason that, like, matches what real world gender dysphoria is, to my understanding, right? With Yamato, it's a very weird case where Yamato just wants to be Odin. Yamato, I imagine 8-year-old Yamato never once considered herself not a girl until she saw what happened with Odin. I don't think we've had any indication of that. Like, I don't think that she actually feels she's a man in a woman's body. I think she just wants to be Odin in every way possible. And I don't think that that's going to be the norm for the rest of the arc. Like, I don't think we're going to end this arc with her feeling like she has to be, like, literally be Odin to accomplish the things that she wants to do. I just don't think that that's the message that Oda is going to be sending, that, like, especially because, gender is probably going to play a bit of an important role in this arc specifically, because of Wano's traditionalism. I especially don't think that Oda is going to be sending the message that, like, a woman has to be a woman has to be a man in order to accomplish certain things. So I just think that this is like a very temporary sort of situation. The fact that the narrator box referred to her as Kaido's daughter, I don't know. I'm just gonna go with girl at the moment. If you all disagree, because this is, again, from my limited understanding of the nuances of this, but if you all disagree, then please let me know in the comments below. But as it is, I'm going to stick with this at least for the rest of this video. Anyway, so the Yamato-Luffy interaction, the part of it that I really liked was the reveal. If you all know from a couple videos back, I made a theory that I believe that Ace could have potentially been press-ganged into joining the Beast Pirates temporarily. And part of the reason I gave for that was because Ace had clearly spent some time on Onigashima, because Ace had had the opportunity to meet Yamato, and from everything we could tell, it seemed as though Yamato was kept exclusively at Onigashima, meaning Ace would have had to have reached Onigashima and spent some time there in order to meet Yamato and form a bond with her, right? So, to me, the fact that it's sort of been confirmed this chapter that Yamato is indeed regularly kept locked up in Onigashima, that adds a little bit more evidence to the notion that Ace very well could have spent some extended period of time in Onigashima in order to have met Yamato and gotten to know her. Now, whether or not that means that Ace was literally forced into joining the Beast Pirates, and that's why he was stuck there, maybe Ace was just kept as a prisoner, similar to Kid, right? Like we saw that Kaido had kept Kid captive, I think it seemed like at Onigashima for some period of time. So it doesn't mean that Ace was forced into the Beast Pirates, but I do think that we have gotten a little more evidence off of this little interaction that Yamato and Ace, the time that they spent together, was at Onigashima. So now it's just a question of why was Ace at Onigashima and for how long, and basically what circumstances, right? The other thing that was interesting, and people are going to go nuts off of this, is Yamato said that she wanted to get off the island on Ace's ship. And I think now she wants to, from the translations that I read, it seems that now she wants to get off the island on Luffy's ship. So, I feel like a little bit like Big News Morgans right now, because if you remember at the end of Whole Cake Island, Big News Morgan said something along the lines of, this is my prediction, the Pirate King will emerge soon and it'll be one of the worst generation, right? So I'm going to say this. Yamato, Tama, Carrot, one of these three is going to join the Straw Hats crew, alright? Yamato, Tama, and Carrot. One of those three is going to be a Straw Hat. Because, yeah, you can go with, Yamato said that she was promised to leave, or she wanted to leave on Ace's ship, and that now she wants to leave on Luffy's ship. But Tama has that exact same dynamic with Luffy. She wanted to leave on Ace's ship, and now she wants to leave on Luffy's ship. And Carrot from the start has wanted to go out and see the world and have adventures. And obviously Carrot maybe has, I think you could argue she has the least reason to actually join and be a permanent member of the Straw Hats, because part of her dream may have been fulfilled by going to Whole Cake Island. But at the same time, out of these three characters, she's by far had the most screen time, most focus, most sort of soft moments that you could see basically setting her up to potentially become a Straw Hat. I think she's still a good ways off, but out of these three, she's gotten the most so far. I mean, Yamato we just met. So out of those three, I think we're going to get another girl on the crew. I think it's going to be one of those three. Let's see where the arc heads, and we'll figure it out as we go along, right? So all of that, very good, very interesting. Last part of the interaction that I liked was the fact that Luffy is now offering that, hey, I can just take these cuffs off real easy nowadays. So Luffy's kind of got a little bit of that skill down. I like to see that. But moving on, just for the sake of time, to the more interesting parts of the chapter. Kaido killed Orochi. Let's talk about that first. Okay, so Kaido killed Orochi. Or did he kill Orochi? I mean, that's the million-dollar question here, because that dictates a lot of how this arc is going to go from here on out. I was really, really, really shocked to see that, because from my understanding, Orochi had a much bigger role to play in the arc going forward. That's why I still question whether or not he's dead. And at least in this case, I don't question or not. Here's the good thing, right? So I can question whether or not he's dead because, one, it's One Piece, and like Oda killing characters, that's like, that's quite a rarity. But in this case, it's not like a Pell or a Pound where it's like this character should clearly have died. There's no reason they survived. They just magically sort of survived. That's the sort of thing I hate. This is a little different in that there's things that we can speculate on that are more within the realm of, like, there's a reason, in-story reason for why this is possible. So one is Orochi's fruit, right? So what's the full name? The Yamato no Orochi. I think that's the full name of the fruit. I might have pronounced it wrong. Yamata or Yamato no, maybe I'm saying Yamato because the Yamato character. Yamata no Orochi, right? I would say for the potential of what that fruit can do, my limited understanding of the mythology behind that creature, I believe you have to cut off all 9 heads. I don't know. Something along those lines. You have to cut off all 9 heads in order to actually kill the creature. And if this is anything similar to, for example, like, Marco, if you damage Marco even when he's just in normal human form, his flames still help him regenerate. So it could just be like a passive ability as well of the Yamato no Orochi, that if you cut off Orochi's head, that he can still survive it and regrow heads, right? So that's a possibility. Other possibility is that this is not the real Orochi, this is a Kanjuro clone. So we got two things up in the air right there. And the third possibility, though, is, I've been mixing up Yamata no Orochi and Yamato. It is legitimately possible. I don't think Oda would just waste a perfectly good devil fruit like that. So let's say he did kill Orochi. In that case, there's that fruit floating around, the Yamato no Orochi fruit. it's totally possible that Oda all along wanted to take that fruit and actually give it to the character Yamato, the real quote-unquote like shogun, the next shogun down the line for Wano. So the fruit was never supposed to be meant to be Orochi's in the first place in the story. That was kind of just messing with the reader or leading us on. In reality, Oda always wanted to possibly give that fruit to Yamato, and then so you got Kaido with the dragon fruit, and then son/daughter Yamato with the, fitting Yamato no Orochi fruit, basically, as a follow-up. So you got the two dragons, basically. It runs in the family. So I do think that that's also basically the third possibility, and I think maybe Oda might have been like having a little fun with the naming of Yamato to lead into that. So I think those are the three possibilities as I see it. But then, like, if we backtrack a little bit, okay, does it make sense whether or not Orochi actually died? To me, I would prefer... It's so hard to say, because based on everything that's happened in Wano so far, right, I would prefer that Orochi not be dead, because to me, that makes me question a little bit of the significance of many little plot points that seem to have been built up going up to this point, right? So, one is Zoro's stuff, because it does seem odd that Oda kind of would have developed a bit of a vendetta between Zoro and Orochi. Like, even if it's a small one, it's a character motivation that Zoro had going forward for this arc. I would have been surprised if Oda just, that was just a throwaway thing, or it was never meant to mean anything. Like, it's what Zoro wanted, what Komurosaki wanted, for that to have just been, sort of meaningless. Just, it makes me question a little bit of the significance of Yasu's execution. Obviously, there was more to Yasu's execution than just that, but that felt like a key component of it. Like, that was the first thing that really got a rise out of Zoro this entire arc. If this arc is meant to be significant for him, I think the fact that Orochi just got killed kind of puts that into question heavily. So there's that side of it, but then also just like in the Orochi side in general, if he dies here and that was the end of the Kurozumi stuff, period, that makes me question a little bit how important a lot of this seemingly peripheral or extra Wano lore that we've been getting really matters, because we got the history of the Kurozumis and the Kozukis and stuff like that. And even when I thought, like, earlier on that we are going to be delving a little bit more into it, like learning what that old hag was all about, learning what that grandpa with the barrier fruit was all about, those two are nowhere to be found now. We know that they're both dead because their fruits have passed on. So we didn't really get that. There was like a bit of extra history that Oda probably had planned out, but he didn't like get to or whatever. And now, if Orochi's just being offed, it kind of feels like, okay, so really a lot of that lore in general of the Kurozumi history and everything like that, it maybe really wasn't that important for the story of Wano, which in turn kind of just, it makes a lot of the background and history of Wano start to feel like a little more like, okay, it was just something that you can hand wave away and just get to the Kaido stuff, right? I would not like that as much. So on the one hand, if Orochi is dead, I would dislike it a little bit for those reasons. On the other hand, if he's dead, I kind of do like it just because it makes the arc head in like really rapidly into a much more interesting direction, I guess, with everything. And I guess this gets to the next point, which is the new Onigashima project, right? So, or the new Onigashima objective, basically. So the idea that all, like, the entire Wano landscape is going to be changed really, really quick and go from basically bad to worse, right? So I don't even know how to make, like, what to make a half of this, right? Like, what does he mean when he's saying Onigashima is literally going to be moved to the flower capital? Is that even possible? Like, are they talking about literally moving it, or are they talking about renaming the flower capital Onigashima? I got the sense that they're literally going to move it. And I know Kaido and Big Mom are strong, but I can't see them literally lifting... I can't see Kaido, even in dragon form, literally lifting and picking up Onigashima and dropping it over there, so something's got to happen. I thought about Big Mom maybe, like, giving life to the skull and having the skull travel across the sea, but that also doesn't make sense because, as I understand, Big Mom can't, it's not like Moria's ability, where you can reanimate, like, dead bodies, and, like, the skull is clearly part of a dead body. So I don't think Big Mom can actually do that. So I don't really know. I have no idea what he meant by that Onigashima stuff, but, sorry, I'm wandering a little bit from the point, but basically, the fact that Orochi is dead, it kind of just opens the way for a lot to change really quickly, which is, interesting. I like the idea of Yamato being forced into the Shogun position. puts her character into a much more interesting spot. Like, we're going to get to see a lot more of what the purpose behind her character is. I like the idea of all of Wano being forced into a more lawless, like, pirate empire type zone. That's kind of what I thought that Blackbeard's Full of Lead Island was basically like, but it looks like this is going to be the real, pirate's paradise type country. So that's exciting. I just think that basically with Orochi out of the way, we get to take things in a much more drastic direction a lot faster. So I really don't know what to say. And the thing is, even if Orochi is alive, let's say Orochi is alive by one of the options listed before, if Orochi is alive, I don't really know how he would fit back into the story at this point, right? Because he's weak, as far as we know. He's weak, so if he survived this, then, like, it's not like he's gonna regain power. It's not like he can just, like, he and Kaido, like, Kaido can just be like, okay, I was just kidding. You know what, you can come back to my side. He's not gonna get to be Shogun again. Like, that relationship with Kaido is pretty much over. It's just like, what would he do in the story from here on out if he came back to life? Like, go over to the Marines as a double agent or something like that? I have no idea. I just don't see what role he fits basically anymore if he survived. And he's got, like, a really good fruit that could easily be passed on to somebody more interesting. So, just in general, the Orochi situation, I don't know what to make of it. I thought it was a really cool scene. I really like the fact that, like, even small stuff like Kaido pulled out King's sword to kill Orochi. I think it would have been almost cooler if Kaido had just, like, clubbed him. But I think the sword makes it more clear that, we should interpret this at least as, like, Kaido killing Orochi. This is not a case of, like, Kaido just knocking Orochi out or whatever. Like, he actually beheaded it. Vinland Saga fans will know if I won't say anything. But yeah, in general, I thought that was a great twist. Don't know where it's going to go, but overall, what's really, really exciting is the new Onigashima initiative. And if you've watched my video on, like, why One Piece's world is so interesting, so cool, I talked a lot about how the world really is a lot like a giant arms race, right? And we saw that full display pretty much this chapter with Kaido and Big Mom both talking about how, okay, the Marines have upped their game, they don't need the Shichibukai system anymore, they've upgraded essentially to a new weapon that makes them confident that they're going to be able to take on the Yonko. But now Kaido and Big Mom are like, well, we don't care because we've basically doubled our forces by teaming up together. Now we're in an alliance, and we're going to be pursuing, like, even more dangerous weapons. So it's just a giant arms race. And that's really what this second half of One Piece is about. And I'm really excited that now we're really getting into it. And the last thing I'll say is that basically, I have been saying over and over, I don't think Wano is close to over yet. I don't think we're actually at the climax of Wano just yet. I don't think that the villains, like, announcing all of this stuff means that, oh, we're not going to get to see any of it. If anything, I think that we're basically at, this is kind of where Wano is actually really getting started, in my opinion. I think, like, this is kind of the real jumping off point. This is now that Oda has kind of set up all the pieces. He's actually established what the villain's plan is. And I think that they are going to brush off the protagonist pretty easily in this next batch of chapters. And that there's going to be a much more intense portion of Wano after this, where Kaido and Big Mom are pursuing this world domination plot, where Wano is being turned into something much worse than it currently is, and where the protagonists potentially have to step back up and start, really getting involved in this world war by first freeing Wano from Kaido and Big Mom before moving on to bigger things. So that's all for this video. If you enjoyed, then definitely like, share, and subscribe.